She's a lot more like I am in real life than any of the characters I've ever played.
Remember her? She left Hollywood 31 years ago. Now we know why. Kristy McNichol was one of the brightest stars of the 1970s and 1980s, winning 2 Emmy Awards and captivating audiences with her talent and charm. Yet at the very peak of her fame, she shocked Hollywood by walking away from the spotlight without warning, leaving fans puzzled and heartbroken. For decades, the mystery of her disappearance lingered, turning her into one of Hollywood's most intriguing enigmas. Now, at 62, Kristy has finally revealed the real reason behind her sudden retreat, offering a glimpse into a truth she had kept hidden for years. From simple roots to stardom, before the fame, before the Emmy Awards. Kristy McNichol's story began in a modest Los Angeles household where survival mattered more than stardom. Her mother, Carolyn, worked tirelessly, juggling multiple jobs: secretary, cosmetics saleswoman, even background extra, just to provide for her children. Unlike the typical stage mother pushing a child toward fame, Carolyn's focus was never on the Hollywood dream. She was simply trying to keep food on the table and give Kristy and her brother Jimmy a chance at a decent life. Yet fate had other plans. One day, while Carolyn was working as an extra in the low-budget film Bigfoot, she brought Kristy and Jimmy along. Their presence caught the eye of a crew member, who suggested that the 2 photogenic, lively children might do well in commercials. This casual remark set the McNichols on an unexpected path. Soon, both Kristy and Jimmy were auditioning for TV spots, their natural charisma shining in front of the camera from commercials. Kristy's career quickly expanded into television sitcoms. Her youthful energy, expressive face, and ability to connect emotionally with audiences made her a natural on screen. Hollywood casting directors noticed her authenticity, a quality that distinguished her from other child actors of the era. For Kristy, acting didn't feel like a carefully engineered career move. It felt like an extension of who she was, a chance to channel the sensitivity and spirit she carried from her everyday life. The true breakthrough came in 1976 when, at just 14 years old, Kristy was cast as Buddy Lawrence in the family drama series Family. The show tackled real issues with emotional honesty, and Kristy's portrayal of Buddy, sensitive, strong-willed, and deeply relatable, captivated viewers nationwide. The role not only turned her into a household name, but also won her critical acclaim, including 2 Emmy Awards. Overnight, Kristy McNichol had gone from commercials and bit parts to being recognized as one of the brightest young talents on American television. Her rise was not a product of privilege or parental ambition, but of chance, raw talent, and resilience. In an industry often dominated by carefully manufactured stars, Kristy's path stood out as refreshingly authentic. She hadn't been pushed into Hollywood. She had stumbled into it, embraced it, and made it her own. This foundation would shape both the heights of her career and the struggles she would later face, as her unique blend of vulnerability and strength became her artistic trademark. Kristy McNichol's childhood sacrifice. If Kristy McNichol's early rise to stardom seemed like a Hollywood fairy tale, the truth beneath it was far more complicated. Fame, for Kristy, did not arrive as a gift. It came at the cost of her childhood. While most teenagers were discovering themselves in the safety of schoolyards and friendships, Kristy was thrust into adult responsibilities that reshaped her family dynamic and drained her spirit. At home, the roles were reversed. Carolyn, her mother, though loving and hardworking, often leaned on Kristy for stability. The young actress quickly became the emotional anchor of the household, more like a mother than a daughter. Her sense of responsibility grew heavy, and the innocence of childhood slipped away. Where most children sought guidance from their parents, Christy was the one holding things together, creating a strange imbalance that followed her into adulthood. On set, the pressures multiplied. By the time she was 18, Christy had appeared in nearly 100 episodes of Family. The show, though rewarding, demanded relentless hours of work that left her little room to breathe. Instead of weekends at the mall or dances with friends, Christy's life revolved around rehearsals, filming schedules, and promotional appearances. Even after the series, there was no pause. She immediately transitioned into films such as Little Darlings and others, carrying the weight of audience expectations and the industry's hunger for her youthful charm. Part of the struggle lay in her inability to say no. Conditioned to please those around her, her mother, producers, co-stars, Christy accepted every opportunity, regardless of her exhaustion. The pattern of overwork became her normal, and the approval of others replaced her own sense of well-being. Behind the smiles and accolades, she was slowly unraveling, paying the hidden cost of stardom that few outsiders ever saw. Inevitably, her spirit began to rebel. Deprived of a carefree childhood, Christy sought release in mischievous behavior, small acts of defiance that were her way of reclaiming the youth she had missed. But while these gestures hinted at a playful side, inside she was crumbling. The weight of constant responsibility, the lack of genuine rest, and the absence of personal freedom created an inner exhaustion that grew harder to conceal. The tragedy of Christy McNichol's early fame lies not only in her success, but in what she had to sacrifice to achieve it. She gained recognition, awards, and admiration, but at the expense of something irreplaceable, her own childhood. By the time the world saw her as a radiant star, Christy herself was already struggling with an emptiness fame could never fill. The turning point for Christy, the pressures of Christy McNichol's early stardom did not simply fade as she grew older. By the early 1980s, those years of relentless work, emotional responsibility, and the silent weight of fame began to erupt into a full-blown crisis. The breaking point came with the filming of Just the Way You Are, 1984, a romantic drama shot in Paris. What seemed like another promising role quickly became the stage for one of the darkest chapters of her life, even before the cameras rolled. Christy's health was unraveling. She suffered from chronic insomnia, plagued by nightmares that left her waking in panic. Her appetite disappeared, leading to severe weight loss that alarmed those around her. Desperate, she sought help, but her cries were brushed aside by management and industry figures who were more concerned about the production schedule than her well-being. To them, Christy was not a young woman in distress. She was an asset, a commodity that needed to deliver. On set in Paris, the strain only worsened. Far from home, surrounded by pressure, Christy found herself breaking down emotionally. She would retreat to her room, crying alone, overwhelmed by a despair she couldn't control. Each scene felt heavier than the last, and her once effervescent energy was replaced by exhaustion and fear. The world saw her as a professional, but inside she was collapsing, piece by piece. It was during this period that Christy finally encountered the help she desperately needed. A specialist in adolescent psychological crises listened to her in a way few ever had. Through therapy, she began to understand that her struggles were not simply about the demands of Hollywood, but about years of buried anger and trauma. From childhood responsibilities to the relentless pace of her career, Christy had been silencing her own needs for far too long. The diagnosis was sobering. deep-seated anxiety, suppressed rage, and a pattern of neglecting her inner self. Later, this would evolve into a formal diagnosis of bipolar disorder. For the first time, Christy made a radical choice: to stop, to say no, to put her mental health above the unending demands of an industry that rarely allowed its stars to pause. Walking away from projects was unthinkable for a young actress at the height of her fame, but Christy's survival depended on it. In listening to her own needs, she began to reclaim pieces of the childhood and humanity she had lost. Hollywood, however, was not ready to hear the truth. Studios and representatives downplayed her crisis, vaguely describing her absence as the result of a chemical imbalance. This phrase was meant to protect her image, but it also erased the reality of her pain. The tabloids filled the void with sensational rumors: drug addiction, alcoholism, even mental breakdowns so severe she could never return. None of these told the real story. The truth was more human and more heartbreaking. Christy McNichol was battling severe anxiety and depression, conditions that had been festering beneath the surface for years. Her silence had been mistaken for resilience, her professionalism for stability. In reality, she was fighting for her life against an illness that few in Hollywood wanted to acknowledge. In the years that followed, the official diagnosis of bipolar disorder helped Christy and those close to her understand the complexity of her struggles. It reframed her story not as one of weakness, but of courage, of an actress who dared to step back, face herself, and prioritize healing over applause. Just the Way You Are thus became more than a film credit in her career. It was the moment that marked both collapse and rebirth. It was the breaking point that forced Christy to confront her hidden wounds, and in doing so, to chart a new path for survival. Her crisis revealed the darker cost of child stardom and the brutality of an industry that rarely paused for compassion. Yet it also highlighted her strength, her willingness to redefine herself not as a star, but as a human being worthy of care. Christy McNichol's farewell to fame. After surviving the psychological battles of the 1980s, Christy McNichol attempted a return to normalcy with a new chapter in television. In 1988, she was cast in the sitcom Empty Nest, playing Barbara Weston, a spirited police officer and daughter of Richard Mulligan's character. The show ran for 7 successful seasons, and once again, Christy found herself a familiar face on American screens. For audiences, it was a welcome return of the actress they had loved since Family. But behind the laughter and steady work, Christy was still quietly fighting her inner struggles. Throughout her time on Empty Nest, she worked with professionalism and charisma, becoming a key part of the ensemble cast. Yet the mental health battles that had haunted her since adolescence never fully left. As filming schedules piled up and pressures mounted, Christy found it harder to sustain the energy the industry demanded. In 1992, midway through the show's run, she made the difficult decision to step away, citing health reasons. Though the studio tried to keep the spotlight on the series itself, those close to her understood that the choice was necessary for her survival. Nearly a decade later, in 2001, Christy made her departure official. After 24 years in Hollywood, she publicly announced her retirement from acting. Her statement was simple but powerful. She wanted to discover what life had to offer beyond the constant demands of the big stage. It was not a surrender, but a conscious act of self-preservation and self-discovery. For someone who had spent her entire life being defined by roles, scripts, and audience expectations, this was the first time she truly took ownership of her path. The end of her career marked not a fall from grace, but an evolution. Christy McNichol left Hollywood not in scandal or disgrace, but with the quiet dignity of someone who had faced her demons and chosen peace over pressure. Her departure symbolized a profound truth, that even in a world built on performance and applause, sometimes the bravest role an actor can play is themselves. Christy McNichol's path to peace. When Christy McNichol walked away from Hollywood, she wasn't stepping into obscurity. She was stepping into herself. After decades of living under the harsh spotlight, her post-acting years became a search for balance, health, and authenticity. Gone were the relentless filming schedules and public scrutiny. Instead, Christy devoted her days to yoga, tennis, and caring for her beloved pets. These simple, grounding activities gave her the peace she had long been denied. For the first time since childhood, she was free to live without the pressure of performance. Christy also chose a life of privacy. Unlike many former stars who sought constant relevance, she avoided tabloids and public spectacle, cherishing a quieter existence. But even in her silence, she carried a powerful truth waiting to be shared. In 2012, she made a deeply personal revelation. She was gay. At 50 years old, Christy came out not to generate headlines, but to inspire. She explained that she wanted to help others, especially young people, who were struggling with their identity and mental health. Her courage resonated with fans who had admired her honesty on screen and now found strength in her openness off-screen. Her post-Hollywood life also carried quiet contributions. Christy sang with a local university choir, blending her voice into a collective harmony rather than seeking the spotlight for herself. She supported foundations dedicated to protecting community music programs, believing strongly in the power of art to heal and connect. While she no longer headlined films or television shows, she poured her energy into nurturing creativity in others. Today, in her early 60s, Christy McNichol lives with serenity, surrounded by friends, animals, and above all, her brother Jimmy, who remains her closest companion and source of strength. She has found the stability she once lacked. Her smile, though away from the cameras, reflects the inner peace she fought so hard to achieve. And though she insists she has no plans to return to Hollywood, she has also said with a wink, "Never say never." It is a reminder that while Christy McNichol may have left the industry, she will always remain a part of its heart. The legacy of Christy McNichol. Christy McNichol's legacy is not defined only by her Emmy-winning performances or her popularity as a teen idol of the 1970s and 1980s. It lies in the honesty with which she lived her life and the courage she displayed in choosing health over fame. Through her roles in Family, Little Darlings, and Empty Nest, she brought authenticity and emotional depth that resonated with millions of viewers. But beyond her screen presence, Christy became a symbol of resilience, showing that stepping away from the spotlight can be an act of strength, not weakness. Her openness about mental health struggles and her decision to come out publicly as gay in 2012 inspired countless people to embrace their truth. Today, Christy's legacy endures not only as an actress, but as a beacon of self-acceptance, reminding us that true greatness is measured not by fame, but by the impact one leaves on hearts and minds. Courage beyond fame. From teenage idol to celebrated Emmy-winning actress, Christy McNichol's journey was never just about fame. It was about survival. Rising quickly in Hollywood, she became a household name, adored by millions, yet silently burdened by the crushing weight of responsibility and mental illness. At her core, Christy's greatest role was not on screen, but in her real life, choosing to step away from the spotlight to preserve her health and reclaim her identity. Her decision to walk away from Hollywood was not an act of defeat, but one of profound courage. Christie's story remains a powerful reminder that no amount of applause, awards, or stardom can replace inner peace. She showed the world that mental health and self-worth must come before public adoration. For many, her departure from acting seemed sudden and tragic. But in truth, it was her act of liberation, a declaration that her life belonged not to studios or audiences, but to herself. By choosing wellness over fame, Christie transformed from a child star into a symbol of authenticity and strength. Today, her legacy is not measured only by the roles she played, but by the example she set. Christy McNichol taught us that the bravest performance of all is knowing when to say enough, when to step back, and when to prioritize the person behind the star. Her life continues to inspire, reminding us that true success lies not in the spotlight, but in the freedom to live honestly and peacefully. If Christy McNichol's story inspired you, please like, comment, and subscribe for more powerful Hollywood journeys and true stories.